Thank you, everyone. It's time to get started, so we'll get rolling here. And I'll just do an audible and try something that my former boss used to do, is to start these things with a joke. So, how many grad students does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but they might take more than 5 years to get it through. Yeah. So I'll just get the temperature of the room there, right? But good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our technical session on the next generation workforce, charting the course for another 50 years. My name is Bo Pham. I'm the Acting Deputy Director for the Office of Nuclear Regulatory Research at the NRC, and I'm going to be facilitating the session today. The NRC appreciates this opportunity to engage in dialogue both remotely and in person on this topic regarding the future of the nuclear workforce. Okay. Just some general logistics. The Wi-Fi code here is RIC 2025, so that's capital RIC 2025. Please remember to silence your electronic devices. All sessions are being video recorded. The Q&A portion of this session will be through electronic means for both the virtual and the in-person attendees. For those of you physically here, please take a moment to scan the QR code that's on the screen right now. And that will allow you to participate as part of the Q&A portions later. For those joining virtually, you will find there's a box to the right of your screen with the tabs for electronic Q&A and feedback. Questions from both in-person participants and virtual participants will flow into the same queue, so the questions received will include those from the whole audience. At the end of the session, if you have follow-up questions for any of the panelists or me, we will be available for a few minutes, so you can come up here and find us near the stage. And because we're the last session of the day here, we won't have to rush out to outside the space. As we close the session, you are invited to scan the feedback QR code and share any thoughts you may have pertaining to the session or the conference in general. And now, I would like to welcome and briefly introduce our panelists. First is Mr. Matt Emmerich from the USNRC. Next is Dr. Rizwan Udin from the University of Illinois. And then we have Dr. Lisa Marshall from the American Nuclear Society and North Carolina State University. And finally, we have Mr. John Nikoski from the Nuclear Energy Agency. Prior to each of their presentations, which we'll go through here soon, I will provide some biographical information, but you can also see their full and impressive bios on our online program platform. After our presentations, there will be an opportunity to engage with the panelists as part of the Q&A process. And I encourage you, as you listen, to submit questions electronically per the instructions using the QR code. So now on to the hot topic of the day. So from the chart here, which comes from the Oak Ridge Institute for Science and Education, I'd say it's encouraging to see that there's been an upward trend in the number of nuclear engineering graduates since the early 2000s. And that's after a long decline post the 3 Mile Island accident. However, what's not shown here, since the chart stops at 2015, but our internal data for recruiting indicates that while there's an overall upward trend still, there seems to be a significant downturn beginning in between 2016 and 19 timeframe. There could be several different factors which play into that, one of which is that from the demand side, nuclear programs like the NRC, for example, don't only seek nuclear engineers, but a broad range of other engineering disciplines as well. Which brings me to this next slide and the focus of this panel. We'll touch on how staffing strategies are evolving, describe how active university engagement strategies support the safe deployment of nuclear technology, the implementation of programs to develop and quickly bring newly hired staff up to full performance level, and how knowledge management is leveraged to incorporate historical lessons learned into modern regulatory and operational processes. With the ever-evolving landscape of the nuclear industry, it's more important than ever to explore new perspectives, share insights, and address the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. We are fortunate to have an exceptional panel of experts with us today. Each of them bring a wealth of experiences and knowledge, and I'm confident that their unique perspectives will spark valuable conversation and inspire new ideas. I do want to acknowledge up front, however, that the current hiring environment, at least for the federal government, is in the process of being reevaluated as part of the current administration's focus on efficiency. Nevertheless, if you take the long view, the federal government as well as the industry will continue to have a need to fill the nuclear pipeline. So while the NRC will surely comply with the ongoing executive orders for staffing, I don't think that necessarily changes the nature of today's conversation or the general strategies needed to develop that pipeline. So thank you for your attention there for my opening remarks, and I look forward to your questions later. Now I would like to introduce our first panelist and a little bit about Mr. Matt Emmerich from the NRC. Matt is the Chief of Reactor Technology Training Branch at the NRC's Technical Training Center in Chattanooga. He has served in this supervisory role since 2020. He joined the NRC in 2011 as a senior reactor technology instructor at the TTC, specializing in boiling water reactor design and operations. In addition to his duties as an instructor, Matt is also qualified as an operator licensing examiner and supports the NRC's administration of licensing exams. Before joining the NRC, he was a senior reactor operator and an instructor and exam developer at the James A. Fitzpatrick Nuclear Power Plant near Oswego, New York. Prior to that, he served as an officer in the U.S. Navy's nuclear submarine program. Matt received his Bachelor of Science degree in Science and Technology from Technology Studies from the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. So I'd like to welcome Matt. And I'll drive the slides.
Thanks, Bo. How's the volume on this thing? Folks hear me? I can talk louder.
There we go.
There we go. And get my instructor voice going again. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Bo, for the introduction. I was presented with this opportunity to speak on this panel, and I found it pretty intriguing. It's like it's kind of coming from each side of the industry right now. So we're taking a look at what the industry's doing. We're taking a look at what the regulator does as far as workforce development. And I think that's important because I think we're facing a lot of the same challenges right now. We're seeing kind of the same demographics as far as age. I'm glad that Bo shared the slide with information on the amount of nuclear engineering degrees going up. That's exciting. So yeah, I'm going to give my NRC perspective, but the bulk of this is really meant for Q&A from you, the attendees. So I'm going to keep things pretty high level. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to focus on during the next several minutes, we're going to talk about recruitment, some of the recruitment activities that we as a regulator do. We'll talk a little bit about the hiring strategies that we have and flexibilities. And like Bo mentioned, right now there is a federal hiring freeze, but I'm going to talk about what we have done and what we will continue to do when we can. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the things that we're doing in training and development. One thing I do want to mention, training and development at the NRC has evolved a great deal just in the last 5 years. So I took over as the chief of the Reactor Technology Branch in 2020, and everybody knows what happened in early 2020. People were working at home. We weren't training at the facility in Chattanooga. And by and large, the bulk of the training that my group provided was all in-person training. So I'm taking folks that had decades and decades of nuclear industry experience and were so used to teaching in certain ways, and we were asked to rapidly turn around. Within a matter of months, we were doing hybrid training. And it's, you know, we can get into the pros and cons of hybrid versus in-person. I'd love to talk about that. I can talk about it all day. But it's been a challenging time, and to see the adoption of training professionals in the NRC and even the industry has been just eye-opening for me. So, next slide, please. All right, so with respect to recruitment, NRC does a lot of things. So we have a very, very strong network with different universities all over the country. Bo mentioned her in my bio, I graduated from RPI. We've got a strong alumni association in the NRC. We have frequent contact with the universities that we as NRC staff came from. And we use that to our advantage. You know, we can continue to coordinate with professors, faculty, the alumni associations. We get invited to job fairs, and we can kind of keep that pipeline flowing of, and I'll be honest with you, when I came out of the Navy and went to the nuclear industry, I had no idea what the NRC even did. It wasn't until I was an instructor at Fitzpatrick where I really got to know the NRC through the operator licensing community. It was my time as an exam developer where I learned about the NRC and what they do, and public service has always been big for me. I did a lot of time in the military, and when I got out, I was like, you know, let's just continue to serve the public. So the mission rang true for me. And when I heard there was a training center in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I was like, wow, I can leave 3 feet of snow for like, and I always used to joke about Oswego. There's like 10 months of winter and 2 months of really bad ice skating. But it's been great. But still having that network to be able to get out and advertise what we as a regulator have to offer, particularly and I think Chairman Wright mentioned it during his plenary session this morning. We have to get out in front and not only go to colleges, we should be going to high schools, middle schools, and saying, hey, look at what you can do with a STEM education. These are the opportunities that are out there available to you. And I think that's something that we as a regulator, we can build that pipeline, but I think the industry has a part in that as well. We're all pulling from the same pool. Advance Act with respect to recruitment, and I'm not going to hit on a lot of Advance Act because gosh, how many times did we hear Advance Act during the plenary sessions this morning? It was a lot. But Section 502 of the Advance Act gives us as a regulator some additional flexibilities with respect to, in this case, recruitment. And on the recruitment front, there are a couple things that the Advance Act does for us. Number one, and I'll come back to the Nuclear Regulator Apprenticeship Network a little bit later. That used to be every other year we would try and get a new cohort of apprentices to come into the agency. That program's been great. We've been through, I think we're on our third iteration now. And it's producing some really, really good folks. I saw a lot of them here helping out with the RIC today. So seeing them come on board, come through training, it's nice to come and see them now as, you know, direct contributors to the agency's mission. So we're going to go to an annual cohort. We're going to seek out applications on an annual basis now for the NRAN program to help drive that pipeline, especially now in times where we've heard things like fusion. We're talking about advanced reactor designs. We're talking about data analytics. These are skill sets that we as a regulator don't have a lot of folks in. So it's getting that pipeline in to teach them how to be a regulator so they can bring their specialized training to bear for our mission-related work. Next slide, please. With respect to hiring authorities, again, Advance Act, we talked about that during the plenary sessions this morning. We can do some additional direct hire through the Advance Act for very specialized technical positions. But direct hire authority is not a new thing for us as a regulator. We've been using direct hire for several years now. In fact, in FY24, about 25% of the folks that we brought into the agency were through a direct hire job announcement. Myself, I've even done some hiring. I had a simulator engineer at the training center in Chattanooga that I brought on via direct hire. It's been great. You get folks that we identify, they have essentially a common set of skills, And it becomes really a talent repository. And you could say, okay, I want that individual. I want to interview him or her. And you can go that way. It's streamlined the process quite a bit for us. And things like Schedule A, we have special hiring authorities for folks that have disabilities. So we can pull from that population. And then veterans preference. I mean, there's a lot of veterans here in the NRC. So we have some flexibilities there as well. Next slide, please. So the bread and butter, what I'm near and dear, man, I love training and development. I could talk about it all day. I've been doing training and development of staff either in the Navy, at the licensee, or here at the NRC for over 20 years. I've got a team of 10 instructors right now in Chattanooga. Collectively, we have literally hundreds of years of operations and design experience across the entire light water reactor fleet. One of the major drivers, and the thing I try and drive home when I'm talking to folks that are younger and looking for a STEM-related job, our training and development programs here at NRC are second to none. We spend a lot of time, not only classroom training, simulator training, and we've got 5 major simulators at our training center in Chattanooga. So every design that's currently in operation in the U.S. right now, we have a simulator for. So simulator, classroom time, but we have an extensive on-the-job training program as well. So the mentoring that new staff get in the field to learn how to be a regulator, to learn how to be a licensed reviewer, we take a lot of pride in developing new employees. Knowledge management, that's kind of a buzzword across the industry right now. What are we doing to retain the knowledge that's walking out the door? You know, folks that have given the better part of their life to the nuclear industry, either as a regulator or as somebody on the other side of the fence, so to speak. How do we not lose that knowledge? So we're making a concerted effort, even more so now, to really hone in on how we can better compile that knowledge before we lose it. We're probably age demographic. We probably look a lot like the industry right now. We have folks that could retire today if they wanted to. And quite honestly, I just lived through this at the training center. When I started there in 2011, everybody I worked with had kids that were my age. It was pretty incredible. So within the last 4 years, they've all retired. I've got a brand new staff now. So you're looking at hundreds of years of experience just walked out the door. Thankfully, there's a lot of mid-career folks in the industry that were willing to come and live life here at the NRC, so I reap the benefits of it, selfishly. But we have some really, really good talent to make sure that our new hires going forward have what they need. And then I talked about NRAN. But what's the future of training look like for us? I mentioned this transition to virtual and hybrid, which we were forced into because of the pandemic. But there are some applications where that's a great modality. It helps us become more agile. We can get more training in front of more people. It does have its drawbacks, but technology is changing all the time, and it's becoming easier and easier to have an engaging virtual training session. Obviously, for things like simulation, those have to be in person, and we understand that. But even with the simulators, we are implementing right now essentially a digital twin simulator. So you can see the picture at the bottom right there. That's an example of what our combustion engineering simulator looks like in a digital environment. Runs the same software that we use on the legacy machine, but it's a new human-machine interface. What we're seeing, and I think the industry has seen it as well, these simulators, they're old, and they cost a lot of money to maintain. Parts are hard to procure, and even wiring over time starts to degrade. To rewire a simulator is it's like $750,000. That's not cost efficient. So we're making this move to digital, and with the digital simulator, it also provides us a platform. So when the advanced reactor designs come out, we now have a medium where we could potentially develop an interface to train on those platforms as well. But, thanks for listening to me. I look forward to your questions during the Q&A, and I'll turn it over to Bo.
Thank you, Matt. So next we have Dr. Rizwan Udin from who is the Department Head of Nuclear, Plasma, and Radiological Engineering at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where he directs the Virtual Education and Research Laboratory. Dr. Udin conducts research in modeling and simulation of reactor engineering problems. His students have also examined the use of 3D immersive virtual reality system and computer games for education and training in the nuclear field. A fellow of the ANS, Dr. Udin has been recognized with the 2016 ANS Arthur Holly Compton Award and the 2015 American Society of Engineering Education's Glenn Murphy Award for his accomplishment in teaching and research. He was honored in 2017 with the Campus Award on Excellence in Guiding Undergraduate Research, and in 2018 with the Campus Award for Excellence in Graduate and Professional Teaching. Well, welcome, Dr. Udin.
Thank you very much, Bo. Hello? Okay. Thank you very much. I will touch upon some of the things that Matt mentioned, but what really made it challenging to address this particular topic was the byline, which said charting the next 50 years. When we are actually facing challenges for the next 5 days, it is difficult to think about next 50 years, but I'll try my best. The second thing that made it a little interesting was when I asked the organizer if this should be the workforce development part from the university perspective for the national scene or Illinois, I was told focus on Illinois. So I came up with this tongue-in-cheek title, Next Generation Nuclear Workforce Development in the Most Nuclear State, Illinois. So a little bit of history, et cetera. Some of it, the thing that I realized that many of you already know, we will go quickly. And so workforce needs and stakeholders, just to emphasize the point, because we are all in it together. We are all competing for the same workforce. NRC does not have a quota set aside. So the people who are coming out, they can go to industry, they can go to national labs, they can go to NRC, other vendors, developers. So different industries, different entities, they need to work hard to attract this small pool. And I will talk also about the pool. So workforce, a little bit of history about Illinois, workforce development, Illinois, current and future. So without spending too much time on that, next slide, please. So I forgot to mention, maybe now, next slide. Okay, so workforce need, we all know, we have seen this liftoff report that talks about 375,000 additional workers. Even if we divide it by a factor of 2, it's a very large number. Of course, these are not all nuclear engineers, but still a very large number of people are needed in order to address the challenge that we face developing nuclear power over the next 50 years. And on that note, I would like to point out the bottom of the screen, which is going to come up a couple of more times, which is taken from that pathway report, liftoff report, which shows the progression, which was discussed a second ago about how to attract middle school and high school students to the field. It shows K-12, vocational, 2-year, 4-year academic institution, advanced studies, and professional development. So just pointing that out for now, and let's go to the next slide and talk about who are all the different stakeholders on the development side, on the supply side for this workforce development. The demand side we know. NRC is there, and of course the vendors, the developers, and the utilities, and the national labs, et cetera. So of course there are nuclear engineering department heads, and whatever I say about nuclear is largely true for nuclear at Illinois. It's largely true for most nuclear departments. There are some unique niches that some departments have, but ANS has recently, we will hear about from ANS in a second, NEI, ORAO, INPO, and other stakeholders out there who are also trying to satisfy the demand side, like continuing education and certificate development that we will probably hear a little later from other speakers. Lisa, you'll talk about that?
I will.
Yeah. Okay, so next slide. So this is the slide that I want to emphasize at this point, and we'll come back to it. You can see the arrows on the top on that same chart that I showed earlier, which is where we get our students who come to the 4-year academic programs or go to advanced programs, and then go and work at NRC and other places. The bottom one is equally, if not more important than the top one, because lately you saw the numbers, right? We went down all the way to 400 graduates back in 2016, and it continued, and then it continued to drop, and now it has been going back up. The thing that is in the circle down below, enhancing nuclear career awareness, okay, supporting pipeline development, these are just about as important as everything else that I will talk about in terms of curriculum development. How do we modify curriculum? How do we develop the curriculum for the next 50 years? If these aspects are not addressed, then we will have a serious challenge. Okay, next slide, please. Very quick history. Why Illinois? Illinois, first state where the first sustained chain fission reaction took place, the state where the first commercial reactor was built, 1959. University of Illinois had a trigger built in 1960, and it operated for a number of years, like many other universities that some still do have their research reactors. Research reactors play a very important role in the training and development of nuclear workforce. Not only for those students who are actually getting their degree in nuclear, but also in other departments as well. They also play an extremely important role in that outreach part. Our reactor, before it was shut down, used to be the star attraction on what we call engineering open house, when there are thousands and thousands of middle school and high school students come to campus to see various labs. Everything is opened up. This used to be the prime location where they used to go. People had to sign up for it, and they will go visit, they will see the blue glow and all kinds of things. So looking ahead, charting the next 50 years, I'll talk about the need for new reactors as well. Next slide, please. Continuing on that connection with Illinois and the history of Illinois, like most nuclear degree programs, Illinois started the master's and PhD degree back in the late 50s, early 60s. And then when there was sufficient demand, at some point in the 70s, most of these nuclear departments started adding the undergraduate degree, bachelor's, MBS degrees to their curriculum. And since then, there was an interim period when many of the departments actually closed down, or they got merged with some other, like mechanical engineering departments. Lately, we have seen some departments have, new departments have started to spring up, or this department that were part of mechanical engineering, for example, they have started to separate as standalone department as the demand grows. Today, at Illinois, we focus on nuclear power, materials, plasma physics, radiological science, reliability, risk, and with world-class research facilities. Next slide, please. Now, those 375,000 demand, that is not going to be all nuclear engineers. Of course, they are going to be at all levels. So it is our responsibility to actually get those electrical engineers and mechanical engineers. Obviously, some of these nuclear power plants, and probably all of them, hire and more mechanical engineers than they do nuclear engineers, for obvious reasons. So we need to make sure that those mechanical and electrical and civil engineers are also getting oriented and acquainted with nuclear power. And most nuclear departments around the country, and we do the same thing, have those appropriate courses for non-nuclear engineering students to train them and to get them ready for workforce in the nuclear industry. So some facts about the engineering college in our university. I will not go through those numbers. Next slide, please. Just mentioned that there are 10 departments, mechanical, civil, electrical, chemical. We have a course number 402, nuclear power engineering. It is taken this semester, it is being taken by about 150 students. None of them is a nuclear engineer. This course is specifically developed for mechanical, electrical, civil engineers. So they take it, and then some of them like it, and then they sometimes go and take the nuclear safety class. Most of them don't, but many of them later write, and then we find out that they are working at a nuclear power plant primarily because they got oriented to nuclear power through this sort of introduction course. We offer BSMS and PhD degrees. Next slide, please. Not to bore with numbers, just 2 or 3 slides on that. Today, there are about 240 students in the nuclear plasma radiological engineering department, about 140 undergrads and about 100 grad students. Over the last 10 years, we have awarded about 300 bachelor's degrees. The trend for the NPRE enrollment, you can see, we saw that earlier, that stopped at 2015. Now you can see the rest of it. It continued to dip down, but around 2019, you can see the numbers started to go up, but they've been going up somewhat slowly, at least for us. Many departments are in the same boat. Many nuclear engineering departments, they have seen numbers growing up, but not as rapidly as we were hoping. That has to do with the outreach part. The numbers, the same numbers, I'll skip that because I want to have more time dedicated somewhere else. Of course, with the increase and the support from various segments, from DOE, from NRC, et cetera, we were able to attract more faculty as the student numbers started to grow. The grad student numbers started to grow. The faculty numbers, as you can see, let me show you 2011, and you can see a picture of mine there, 2011, about 8 faculty members. That was our department. And today, this is our department. Many of these actually were hired with support from the NRC faculty development grants. And this is true across the country. Many nuclear engineering departments were able to actually go to the deans because they had support for the startup funds. And you can see a very young Katie Huff in that picture. And I will not dwell on that. Please, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, maybe 3 or 4. Next slide. So that's our department name, Nuclear Plasma Radiological Engineering. We have 3 main parts, nuclear, plasma, and radiological, which is true for most departments across the country. Some of them don't. I think we are the only one that has the name plasma in the name, the word plasma in the name. Most places either have nuclear engineering or nuclear and some kind of radiological science. So next slide, next slide. So these are the 3 main parts, but we also take pride in very explicitly then focusing on the 2 cross-cutting areas. One of them, next slide, is material science, and the other one is reliability and risk. We have made a very concerted effort to develop our reliability and risk component in the department, which is then going to help us transition to the discussion for the next 50 years part of this talk. Next slide, please. When we talk about the next 50 years, what is it that we need to be doing? We will continue to have your reactive physics, your criticality, your thermal hydraulics, materials, radiation protection and shielding, and those basic things that all people need to know as a nuclear engineer. And if you're not a nuclear engineer who's going to work in the nuclear industry, at least some of them need to be covered. But then as we move forward, what has happened over the last 3, 4, 5 years with the development of the new reactor, different types of reactor designs, non-light water reactor designs, there are certain things that are coming up very, very bluntly in front of us that we need to be paying attention to make sure that our students who will be graduating from the universities today and they will be working at, let's say, NRC for the next 30 years, what is it that they are getting? the PRA, part of reliability and risk, is near the top, which has been there in some departments around the country, but not necessarily all. The other components that are becoming increasingly important, and NRC, I believe, has been facing this challenge, getting the talent to be able to assess and evaluate designs that rely on digital systems, autonomous control. So you see the second bullet, digital twins, cybersecurity, autonomy, AI, and ML. These are topics that are not part of traditional nuclear engineering curriculum. In one form or another, we will have to have this tool set in the hand of not just the developer and designers, but also in the hand of the regulators. Microreactor initiative, all of the research reactors currently working are based on light water, the old reactor design. Almost a vast majority of the reactors that are being developed today, they are of different kind. Are we going to have research reactors on campuses just the way they were built in the late 50s and 60s that led to the light water reactor, PWR, sorry. So there's thought there that maybe that should happen. Some of it is already happening. Abilene Christian is going to put a molten salt reactor. We have just started. This year, we got the approval, and the first set of students will be admitted to the program this year, this fall, who can get a degree that is combined between nuclear and data science. So all the core nuclear courses still need to be taken, but all the technical electives will come from a certain subset that will help them get the basic foundation for a degree that can be called nuclear plus data science. So it's NPRE plus data science degree. That's an undergraduate degree. We had some feedback from especially utilities, and they said this would be a great idea to have people who are actually not only nuclear engineers, but also data scientists. But then you go back up 2 bullets up, the second bullet from the top, all of those skill sets also need to be made available in one form or another. Next slide, please. So very quickly, workforce for the future. The Soteria Labs, now this is focusing a little bit on Illinois. Similar work has been going on in some of the other departments as well. We have one of the stronger programs in reliability and risk. Also, the new digital twin push that is taking place. We also have a very strong program, and people are being trained. Undergraduate students are being, they are doing research in this research group, and then if they stay for master's or PhD, they will be able to do additional work. Next slide, please. Research reactor, of course, there have been ups and downs for us. We were working with USNC, and now it's going to be Nano. We will see where that goes, but there is significant push now. Multiple universities have stepped up, and they are looking at the possibility of putting new research reactors of different kinds on their campuses. So I think that's an excellent move when we are looking at the next 50 years. Next slide, please. So a microreactor, just to drive the point home, extremely important, because the other item that I talked about in the previous slide about AI and ML and autonomy and other uses, uses other than just electricity production, all of them can possibly be tested in a research reactor on a university campus. So there are multiple reasons to actually very strongly think about at least a few new research reactors on university campuses. Next slide, please. This is bringing me down to the last part of my presentation, outreach and bridging efforts to attract workforce to nuclear. Extremely important, needless to say, everybody was nodding their head that this is the critical component. I'll give you an example. Our numbers have gone up in terms of number of applications to our department from 100 to 150 to 200, a little more than 200 last year. This is the number of applications. In the same time, about over the last 5 years, the number of applications to aerospace engineering has gone from about 2,400 to 2,700. They are now getting more number of applications for aerospace engineering than civil engineering department did. They are, however that is happening, this is not happening in nuclear, despite the fact that we need 375,000 people in the next so many years. We will need to focus on those bottom arrows extensively with help from ANS, NEI, NRC, et cetera, whoever can help, and of course the academia, in order to reach out to all the STEM components, middle school, high school, community colleges. So University of Illinois has reached out to the Chicago community colleges. We have a program, and we'll be working with them extensively to try to see if we can develop that pipeline. Next slide, please. So once again, the universities are doing what they can do. We have very strong, outreach program. We have a simulator that we now open to education, research, as well as for outreach. All the groups, STEM, high school, middle school students who come to the department, we take them to the simulator room and we dazzle them. And some of them do show up. And they mention later that when they come to the department as undergraduate students, that this is where they thought that they were going to do nuclear engineering. Next slide, please. Engineering Access Alliance, the thing that I mentioned between City Colleges of Chicago and the Granger College of Engineering at the University of Illinois, this has given us access to many, many community colleges in Chicago, and this was just last year. This agreement, MOU, was signed, and we will be taking advantage of that to actually develop the pipeline to try to attract students from community colleges. And the local utility is very interested in developing that pipeline because they know that these students from the Chicagoland will then stay in Chicagoland if they get trained in nuclear, and then they work in that, in that neighborhood. So next slide, please. NRC has played a very significant role in all of this. These are the numbers for Illinois and the graduate scholarship, fellowship, faculty development grant, and the R&D program. And almost all nuclear engineering departments have benefited from this program. We hope that it will continue and grow. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you.
I don't know how I did with time, but.
No, I think we're good. I'm managing the clock right here, so you'll be fine. Next, we have Dr. Lisa Marshall, who is the current president of the American Nuclear Society, and also an assistant extension professor, as well as the director of outreach, retention, and engagement at the North Carolina State University Department of Nuclear Engineering. She brings over 20 years of experience in engineering education, and is or has been an education outreach director on several U.S. Department of Energy funded consortia. Dr. Marshall teaches the first-year engineering program. She teaches and co-directs the study abroad program in engineering and social sciences, and serves on the Working Council for the Women in Science and Engineering program. She is the past chair and the of the Association of Women Faculty. She also serves on the Nuclear Energy Agency's Council of Advisor, the high-level group on improving the gender balance in the nuclear sector, and she chairs the NEA's Global Forum Working Group on building a pipeline of STEM professionals. Welcome, Dr. Marshall.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So that's good. Thank you. Being a nuclear professional is a noble endeavor, and how we engage with the next generation is crucial for the current as well as the future fleet. Next slide. Sorry, and go back, please. Sorry. And the numbers show that, right? Whether we're looking at the numbers that are employed in the industry, looking at about 74,000, and directly at nuclear power plants, about 48,000, there is a impactful economic contribution that we are having, right? And when we look at the direct, in addition to the indirect or the pipeline, you're looking at a total of about 257,000, earning about $23.7 billion, right? And contributing about $63 billion to the US GDP. Tax contributions are not to be sneezed at either, at all levels, and you see a full impact across all of the states within the United States. Next slide. So in addition to the current professionals that we have, there is a need for replacement, and this is due either to retirement or to attrition. There are labor force projections to get us to that 200 gigawatts by 2050 that you heard in the earlier plenaries today, and you've heard in other settings as well. Next slide. We're also seeing, or the tone continues with the current administration, with the new Secretary of Energy, Christopher Wright, and his memo that came out on February 5th. These are the key areas in a number of other bullet points that came out in that memo, right? We're looking at energy leadership, we're looking at fusion energy, we're looking at or paying attention to our nuclear weapons stockpile, and then also the current and the advanced reactors. We have many highlights to mention, whether we're talking about our new power plants or we're talking about reactor restarts, or the promise of that. Deployment targets are trying to close off and round out our domestic fuel cycle. Also a number of demonstration projects, advanced light water, small modular reactors, and also some of the regional energy training centers that DOE have stood up. And then we're seeing some nods or interest coming from global financial interests, and the list goes on, right? We heard about it this morning in relation to the data centers, for example. Next slide. I want to focus in this context on what does the landscape look like, and what then do we have to do, and the role that American Nuclear Society is playing and has played for a number of years. Now, I came into the industry in 2001, and that was the height of that first wave that was coming through. And when I look back on it, I think that when you look at the work of ANS, we have been there at the forefront, developing the instruments and then trying to get those into schools and then outside of school systems as well to make a difference. And we've had some very meaningful partnerships that continue today. I joined ANS in 2005, rolled up my sleeve, and got to work, right? And it has been outreach as we know it today, and we're projecting into the future, has changed for the better, but we still have a lot of work to do. So when you look at this flow, you see that when you look at STEM workforce, it's about 24% of the US population, but only half of those have at least a bachelor's degree or higher. And then when we continue with the flow, we see that those that are in science and engineering positions, that drops to 6%, right? So 24 of the larger population, with those working in the industry directly. Now, we have other individuals that are working in science and engineering related occupations as well. But for me, how then do we get this number up higher, and how do we hold on or retain these individuals and grow? Next slide. And then when we take a look at where we stand as a percentage of total graduates in the STEM fields, we're about 20%. And this is from I like to work with full data sets, so this is going back to 2020 for the full data sets, but we're also seeing those same kind of numbers as we move into 2024 at the very least, accordingly. Next slide. There's definitely a leaky pipeline, and you hear that in the literature. both within nuclear engineering education, more broadly engineering education, and science education. And there are many different points where we have a leak of students out of the educational system, generally speaking. And that has shifted, right? The decision-making process about career awareness and a career direction has moved from high school to middle school, and it is now at the elementary school level. So how then do we have an impact on the trend that we're seeing in a positive light for education as a whole, STEM education, and then for individuals to try to have them focus in on our particular field currently and into the future? I'm going to borrow from the architectural literature that talks about educational ecology. That is not only what goes on inside of the classroom or associated in the campuses, right? Whether you're talking about community college, universities, or pre-college spaces, but how we develop these and have an influence on these spaces and places of learning, formal and informal, virtual and in person, hybrid, right? All of these have to be taken into consideration in trying to move away from this linear model of, okay, we're going to have some leakages along the way, to create an environment that really supports the primary role that STEM plays in our everyday life. Next slide. And that's where American Nuclear Society comes in, along with other professional organizations. It is a society that you're looking at professionals coming from academia, from industry, as well as government and national laboratories. And our mission and vision is engagement, right? And the use of and the cultivation of innovation as it relates to nuclear science and technology. And all of this is towards improving human lives and then also the environment as a whole. And especially when we're looking at the generations, the younger generations that are coming up now, they're really looking for that purpose, right? It's slightly different from the values or the drive, I should say is a better word, to doing what we do and preparing for our various professional lives. And it's very much about impact, right? It's very much about giving back to society as a whole. And that has become more prominent in how they talk about the professions that they are looking at. So how then do we show that we are that noble profession that impacts literally everything, right? For them to take a closer look at what we have to offer and join us in this particular mandate. Next slide. There are a number of different STEM programs that American Nuclear Society has developed over the years, and it is most definitely the volunteers that have given of their time and labor to make these things happen. Navigating Nuclear, we teamed up with Discovery Education as a platform that has penetration into about 50% of the pre-college schools. And what we were doing is aligning the next generation science standards in the curriculum, right, from grade 3 through to grade 12. We also have the educator training program, and we're looking at professional development webinars as well as workshops on nuclear science concepts and then also teaching strategies. Then we have, and that one's for educators in particular. We have the Pathways to Nuclear. So it's a showcase of career opportunities and to inspire students to take a closer look and take this journey with us. And then the Ambassadors Program is where we all want to roll up our sleeves and take action, but may be a little bit shy, especially there's nothing like looking back at the eyes of middle schoolers and you've answered their question and they keep on asking the question, but why? right? It can be intimidating. So how then do we prepare individuals to go into the classroom or to go into informal learning spaces, feel comfortable, be enthusiastic, and share information on nuclear science? So once again, this is formal and informal settings, and it's in person as well as virtual. Next slide. So I'm just going to take you on a little walk, right? And another thing that we made a decision on is that all of the materials, all of the instruments that we have are in front of a paywall, right? So anyone can utilize the resources that are available. I think about powering possibilities, right? That adventure, that thought that you want to inspire the younger generation. So when you hear about going to the moon, well, what's nuclear's role in that journey? Next slide. Or you have a number of science projects that come up, whether it's after-school programs, it is science fairs, et cetera. So to have a project that they can be involved in and be proud to share with some of the other students and other stakeholders that are participating in these environments. Next slide. You also have lesson bundles for the high schoolers, right, to enhance the curriculum that they have on hand. And it ranges. So it is on the fission side, radiological side, plasma side, and we're developing for the fusion component as well. Next slide. So once again, it's not a one-touch at all, but it is a series of touches and engagements and relationships that we're developing with the educators. I'm thinking of educators and counselors as that generational impact, right, that keeps on giving. And to have individuals feel comfortable with the material and enthusiastic about the material and have a network that then they can rely on for additional support. In addition to the Navigating Nuclear platform, as well as lab activities and other tools that we have available. So you have in-person workshops as well as monthly webinars. Next slide. Pathways to nuclear, right? You're looking at inspiring, and exactly what does that look like? What does the careers look like? So if students can see it, they can be it, right? They begin upon that particular path. Next slide. And the question I always get as I put on the university hat, but also when I go out on behalf of American Nuclear Society, but what exactly is done on a day-to-day basis? Or what does this all entail? So to have individuals talk about their own journeys and then also the professions that they do day in, day out to inspire and to guide individuals along the educational path. Next slide. So remember I said the ambassadors program, sometimes we're all enthusiastic but are feeling a little nervous with those eyeballs looking back. And it's not death by PowerPoint that you want to relate to them. That's where the educational presentations come in as an entry point. There are videos. We can also kind of bring in other professionals to talk about what they do. And then there's some hands-on instruments that one can use as well. Next slide. So some of the other initiatives, at one point we started with the cloud chamber kits, and it used to be a sign-in, sign-out. I don't want it back. We don't want it back. We wanted to stay in that classroom or stay with that scout leader so that they're utilizing it time and time again. We scaled it down, and we'll send out a bundle of them to a particular organization. Also, to give an award during the science fair, right? So then the students are also additionally motivated that there is an award if I were to take this particular track. And then also the merit badges, right? Both for the Boy Scout, that's now known as Scouts, and then the Girl Scouts as well. And then what I'm excited about is the launch of the high school sections of the American Nuclear Society, and we're going to follow right up behind that with the community college A&S sections as well. It's an opportunity to continue the touch points that we began, hopefully in elementary school, and continue it all through the educational profession, and a smooth transition into the early career and the professional organizations and places of employment. Next slide. Something that's new and dear to a number of us within the American Nuclear Society is the certificates and certification. We're looking at non-STEM employees and executives, also the lateral entry personnel, your congressional staffers, as well as media reps. The more individuals are feeling comfortable with the material, the better. And then also this serves as a continuing education process within the industry. Some of the topics you can see here, from the fundamentals to looking at radiation safety, the standards, how do power plants work, waste management, the full life cycle. Next slide. And then there are also those collaborations, both nationally as well as internationally. Whether we're talking about affinity professional organizations, so we teamed up with ORAU, Oak Ridge Associated Universities. You've got Vanderbilt University that are related to this particular project. We are, as American Nuclear Society, Nuclear Energy Institute, et cetera, to come up with and work on a nuclear energy academic roadmap. We've released the executive summary and are working on the larger report. And we want it to be actionables, right? So it's about best practices and lessons learned and touch points for individuals to kind of come into the large area of engagement outreach that we need to do and continue to do. International nuclear societies, and then also the international and national nuclear societies and international and national nuclear-related societies as well, and making those connections. For example, with Health Physics Society or the Institute for Nuclear Materials Management, or you're looking at Women in Nuclear, or you're looking outside and participation in such organizations as the American Society of Engineering Education, which then gives us a professional approach to education that then we can mold within our particular area. And then intergovernmental organizations such as the Nuclear Energy Agency. They're doing great work, and I know my colleague here is going to talk a little bit more, but they're also interested. How do we increase the number of women in the field? How then do we support them as they go through? How then do we work on building a pipeline of STEM professionals, not only here in the United States, but abroad, right? And then also, what are some of the lessons learned, best practices accordingly? In addition, we are also involved in, we started a standards committee back in 1957, if my memory serves me correctly, 150 standards that we use today. You also have the you have the student chapters, you've got local chapters, you've got annual, winter, and topical meetings. We do co-sponsorship of various events. Within the organization, there is the student section committee as well as the young members group. So we're actively seeing it as an ecology, right? And how then do we have peer-to-peer interactions that hopefully, and we've seen some good examples of it, inspiring and supporting as individuals move through. And we need to ramp up that a whole lot more based on the current environment and then the future that is projected. Next slide. Engagement happens because of members, of staff, of educators, of the funders, current and future collaborators. And I hope that you will join us on this journey in answering the call for this noble profession and in encouraging other individuals to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So, and finally, we have Mr. John Nikoski, who is the Deputy Head of the Division of Nuclear Safety, Technology, and Regulation at the Nuclear Energy Agency. He has more than 40 years' experience working in the nuclear field as a test and refueling engineer for the U.S. Navy, as an inspector and technical expert for the NRC, and as a nuclear safety specialist with the NEA. While at the NRC, he held leadership roles in the areas of regulatory program development, including licensing and oversight, as well as in technical programs for engineering, research, and probabilistic risk assessment. In his current role at NEA, he provides leadership and guidance to a diverse international team of technical, policy, and regulatory experts in addressing regulatory challenges faced in the pursuit of energy independence and achieving carbon reduction goals. So welcome back, John.
Thank you, Bo. So you have to excuse me, I'm going a little hoarse. I was going to tell you what the NEA is about, but that kind of was already covered in my bio, so I'll skip that. Next slide, please. So you probably have all seen slides like this where it shows the growth of nuclear energy in helping to meet net zero goals. So this demonstrates an acceleration of nuclear energy programs. You need to recognize that building talent is a long-term investment. You heard we're reaching out at the grade school level in many instances to get students interested in STEM in general, encouraging them to think about nuclear in particular. And I think there's clear benefits from international cooperation in developing and transferring nuclear knowledge. Next slide, please. So this is an issue that's been very important to the NEA Committee on Nuclear Regulatory Activities, commonly known as CNRA. They had about a 2-hour, 3-hour discussion on competency management. They all recognize that in light of the COP28 commitment or statement by 25 plus countries on tripling nuclear capacity by 2050, what they were doing now to meet their current needs in staffing in the future was not going to be enough, so they wanted to share ideas and thoughts about what they could do. In response to that, the NEA developed a survey, and we've got responses from 18 countries that covers 24 different organizations. We were focusing on regulatory authorities and their technical support organizations. And so we asked them to identify competency-related nuclear safety challenges that the regulator will confront. So the survey looked at setting the scene. What are the projections within the national nuclear context? What do they see in their country? What competencies do they think they need for regulators and technical support areas? Education, what were they thinking or are they thinking about for preparing the pipeline for future talent? How do they attract the talent that is educated? There's a lot of competition with other organizations, other countries. Think of the European context. The European Union is 28, I think it's about 28 member countries. They're all competing with each other to get from the same talent pool. Similarly, retention. How do you keep them once you've got them? And then collaboration. They're looking at ways to improve efficiency and effective through collaboration, leveraging both domestic and international collaboration, prepare the future workforce. Next slide, please. So some preliminary results, and we haven't completed the analysis of this data, but you're looking at which levels of formal education will your organization require most. The majority of them said postgraduate degrees, such as a master's degree or equivalent. Which postgraduate skills do you foresee as being most difficult to attract and retain? You've heard a lot about AI and digital proficiency, and in the international context, communication is a key need that is going to be a challenge to get. And you can put in there communication in English, because the The language of international business, international collaboration is English. You go to a site, even in Europe, the common language is English. They all speak their own languages, but if they're working in a multinational or multicultural arrangement, they all speak English. So, and they have to be able to communicate that. What areas or challenges are coming from disruptive, innovative, and emergency technology? You see, AI is the big driver. How is that going to affect? You're going to need staff that understands that. And management is the second most significant. I wouldn't read too much into that. It was a small survey, small results, but I think management needs to look at how they work with their staff, how they encourage them. You know, you've all heard walk the talk, right? Be the motivators, be those that are encouraging people to be bold, take some risks, help them when they fail, make them successful. And then which postgraduate core nuclear areas or competencies do you foresee as being the most difficult to attract and retain? Materials engineering, reactor physics and dynamics, thermal hydraulics, and, sorry, I can't read it. That's the problem with getting old. 40 years of working in the industry. Risk analysis, and then severe accident analysis. Those are the big hitters. That's not a surprise. Those are similar to what we need right now. Next slide, please. So with challenges and outreach and collaboration, what challenges do you anticipate your country will face in providing the necessary educated population? Proficiency of STEM of future generations. There's been a decline, not in just the U.S., but internationally in the number of students going into STEM programs. That trend needs to change. Also, it's not just the engineers, the scientists, but the technicians and the crafts. You need to have a sufficient level of population that are knowledgeable in those areas. And when do you think nuclear energy targeted outreach should start? Very high response, earlier than high school. So you should be reaching out at the middle school, at the elementary school, and I'm very encouraged to hear all of the great things that the American Nuclear Society is doing. I know the NRC has outreach to support science fairs. They go judge science fairs. I think that's fantastic. I'll get later on some of the things that the NEA is doing in a bit. Then, do you believe international initiatives and collaboration could be strengthened to help meet the future demands? Blah, blah, you can read the rest. And I think there's overwhelming support for international collaboration. One of the ones that's, I think, important to look at is collaboration on development of common safety reviews for advanced reactor designs. We keep thinking domestically, keep thinking parochially about, well, we have this problem in our country. Well, guess what? Internationally, everyone is facing that same challenge, and often on the exact same technology. So there's a handful of commercially viable today reactor technologies that are being reviewed. Why are we doing it in isolation? Collaboration could help us improve our efficiency and effectiveness with likely reductions in individual country staff and level of effort. I'll get off my soapbox. That's a pet project of mine. Anyway, then knowledge sharing through targeted international collaborations, such as sharing best practices through working groups, international conferences, and workshops or joint research efforts. And then professional training, such as international topic summer schools, training, or professional exchange programs. I know the NRC has a very strong or had, I don't know if it still does, very strong foreign exchange program with other countries where regulators from other countries will come and work at the NRC. A lot of the senior regulators took advantage of that work in a number of European countries and Japan. You go talk to them, oh, your English is very good. Well, it's partly because they spent a year or two at the NRC learning how the NRC does business and then taking that back and sharing knowledge. I would encourage you to continue to do that. Next slide, please. So what does it look like 50 years from now? I was going to say it's hard to say, but I think from what we believe today, the targeted competencies needed for regulators and support organizations, it's still going to be the traditional nuclear safety competencies. That's going to remain crucial. But I think you also need to develop competencies that support adapting to fast-changing, highly interconnected environments. So you need to be able to have skills to let people take some risks, assess what the risks are, assess what the benefits are, see if it'll work, and then if it doesn't, what did you learn, and move on. I think that's something that we need to be aware of. Communication and language proficiency skills, I think, are enablers that need to be further developed. And again, English is a key language in international business. And then I think I've mentioned before, AI awareness and in general digital proficiency is key. Next slide, please. So what is the NEA doing about it? We're looking at expanding our profile to provide open access to technical information and infrastructure. That allows us to transfer tacitly and explicitly knowledge gained over, I don't know how long has the NEA been in existence, probably a long time, 50 years. Huh?
In the 1950s.
Yeah, so it's been around for a very long time. I think actually 75, right around 75 years. Also looking at what can we do to retain the staff. How can the NEA help? By working with regulators as they analyze specific issues related to retention. Training of academia, industry, and regulators, and also attracting students and professionals by building a community of nuclear professionals. We have data and technical reports. I'll just touch a couple of them on transferring thermal hydraulic and severe accident knowledge gained through NEA activities. They're called Thicket seminars. We have the systematic involvement of master's and PhD students in NEA joint projects. And the NEA joint projects, I think we have 26 of them right now. They cover everything from thermal hydraulics, severe accident analysis, materials, you pick a topic, fire, we probably have some joint project that touches on those. Nuclear Education Skills and Technology Framework, known as NEST. Training the next generation nuclear simulation specialist. We have SINUS, it's called SINUS, where we train simulation specialists. And then we're in the process of developing an international safety assessment school. That's a work in progress that'll help educate regulators coming into the, new regulators coming into the community to teach them what it takes to prepare a high quality safety assessment. In other topical areas, we have the International Radiation Protection School. Also, there's associated with radiation protection, risk communication. In legal areas, we have the International School of Nuclear Law. That's a 2-week course associated with Montpellier University in the south of France. The students go to this, are trained and educated in nuclear law aspects from an international perspective, and then they have an opportunity to write a thesis and get a certificate upon completion from Montpellier University. And associated with that, they saw the NEA has seen a need to provide a secondary course on international nuclear law essentials. Think of that as the primer for the International School of Nuclear Law. We hold international mentoring workshops in science and engineering, and we also have the Global Forum on Nuclear Education, Science, Technology, and Policy. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, the NEA has ambitions for supporting its member countries in nuclear education and workforce development. We're hoping to leverage the benefits from NEA activities and in-house expertise for developing practical materials, seminars, joint projects, and training for academia and young professionals. We hope to expand hands-on training for students and young professionals. We want to enable long-term dialogue among academic institutions, policymakers, and key stakeholders in the nuclear sector. We want to continue dialogue with regulators to focus on specific needs that we are identifying as we do the analysis of the NEA Survey on Competency Management. We're looking to build or contribute to building the STEM pipeline by engaging with secondary school students and teachers. And then we want to leverage the competencies regardless of demographics in the sector by supporting merit-based career development. Last slide, please. So on this slide, I have a link to the Train with the NRC. It's a website that touches on all of the different opportunities for training that the NEA provides. And with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, John. And thank you all. I really appreciate it. You're all outstanding ambassadors for your institution, so I appreciate your presentations. We have about 25 minutes or so for the Q&A portion here. Once again, we've gotten plenty of questions already, but if you want to ask a question, please scan the QR code here. So let me start with just more of a broader softball type of question, but I'll definitely give you a little break for your voice there, John. But one of the questions we haven't been here is, what advice do you have to accelerate and attracting all the talents needed to add 200 gigawatts of generation by 2050? And I think we've heard a lot from a lot of the other presentations today. If we lived in a perfect world, we can implement everything that many of you touched on already. But here's probably an opportunity to maybe Shark Tank it a little bit and get your take on, where would you put your bets, or what, from your experience, and it's good that we have different experiences from each of the panelists here. Where would you start, or where do you think the heat map would draw you to in terms of meeting, or even coming close to meeting that target?
So I'll give a stab at it. When we're talking about the acceleration that we're forecasting right now, and where should we put the monies when we're looking at the population that we need to see come into the industry, dedicated personnel, right? I think that's key, and those individuals that have that training, that openness to pulling from other sectors, from kind of the latest, greatest research that's coming from education, from the educational realm, in particular STEM education and engineering education, so that then we can transform some of our materials into more multimodal types of learning for multimodal learning to occur, right? When I think about how I learned in school compared to we're trying to attract this next generation, have we also incorporated what has been proven in physics education, chemistry education, and computer science education, right? In way of gamifying, or in way of utilization of VR, or more hands-on, right? The laboratory experience and relating it to real-life activities that they can see, okay, I'm learning this because, and I'm going to going to apply this in this manner. And I think that that's a full-time job. That's a full-time job for a division, right? So in the perfect world, to have more dedicated personnel, and that this needs to be done in partnership, right? So when I think about how much I've learned from the American Society of Engineering Education, because they're focusing in on the techniques that are necessary and the theoretical basis for doing things differently in education at all levels. I see a partnership with such an organization to be beneficial and essential as we move forward.
Okay. John?
I'd like to touch on one of the things, dedicated personnel. That's requires an individual commitment, because oftentimes this is not an organizational function. Often you need volunteers. I'll share a little history. One of the biggest joys I had when my children were young was to go into their school every other Friday on my compressed day off and work with second graders, third graders, fourth graders, helping them learn math. And to watch when they solve the problem by themselves while you're talking them through it. That's joyful. We each need to think about what we can contribute individually within the organizational context. How can we reach out? And I think it's going to take a commitment from the professionals. I think people, as they become the retirement, what am I going to do in retirement? Oh, I can go consult. Well, maybe one of the things you could think about is I have 40 years of experience. Let me talk to some young students. Let me talk to some young professionals. Let me encourage them to think about STEM at the early age, nuclear as they get older. So I think it's a personal commitment on each of us in the profession that wants to solve this problem to work within the larger framework that an organization like ANS provides. So that's where I would focus my energies.
Thanks, Jen. And I would mention that one of the other questions we have here is like, how would you leverage, or what ways to kind of support knowledge management? And I think traditionally when we talk about knowledge management, we tend to look at it from the workplace transfer of knowledge. When I think what you just brought up there, John and Lisa, you touched on is looking at the future, and that's a great idea to just use individuals who are passionate about what's being done here, or the trade, and then bringing it to that audience in that way. Matt, if I can kind of also recontextualize that question a little bit. You see students from the NRC, from both folks coming fresh out of school as well as seasoned professionals from other industry, for example. How do you see, from a preparation perspective, the different types of different demographics of folks coming through there? What do you see? Is there a gap, or is it something strong suit that we should build upon?
That's a good question, Bo, and I've got thoughts on everything, but we are seeing what I perceive as a gap. When I think back to when I joined the agency in 2011, we didn't have an NRAN cohort back there, but we had something similar. It was like the Nuclear Science Professional Development Program, or NSPDP. Kind of a similar program. They were folks primarily that were coming out of the collegiate ranks, and they would come into the agency and qualify within 2 years, and Omni Domini, they were a regulator. The pedigree, and again, this is my opinion, but the pedigree of student we saw back during that time frame is different than what we're seeing now. And I don't think there's a singular issue that's driving and I hate to use the word decline, because there's so many drivers, in my opinion. The pandemic certainly did not help when you took away 3 to 4 years worth of in-person interaction for folks that are in their most important developmental stages. But this new generation, even before COVID, they're learning things differently. So they're much more in tune with using digital equipment, tablets or Surface Pro computers or touchscreen displays. They're more into games, and I think from a learning and development perspective that we as training professionals probably haven't caught up to that yet to really take advantage. But I think even the focus isn't as much on STEM as it used to be. So the students that we see, initial training, we're seeing a lot more struggles with like basic engineering principles. And we find ourselves having to spend like a couple, 3 days of, systems training on a Westinghouse design, having to explain concepts like pump head and saturation. Those things, you show somebody a steam table now that's less than 30 years old, and they're going to laugh at you. I got an app for that on my phone. Well, have you ever heard of this guy, Molière? No, they don't know that either. So there certainly is a gap, and I think, similar to what Lisa and John have said, it's not to be cliche, it takes a village. It's not just an industry issue. It's not just an academia issue. I think it's an issue across the board that I think we all can work together to help solve. So I kind of rambled a little bit there, Bo.
Perfect. And you know what? Speaking of use of technology, Adam Lee, my assistant over there, used technology to let me know that the session actually ended at 5:15 and not 5:30. So I apologize for mismanaging the clock on that. But once again, I really appreciate the panelists for providing your perspective, and I think I don't think we could put together better panelists because of all the different and diverse perspective from everyone. So I thank you again, and I would like to adjourn the session. And again, many of us will be available afterwards if you have additional questions. So thank you.